Hello, I hope you're doing well tonight. Tonight we're going to take a look at in Matthew 5. If you have your Bibles, you can open them there. We're going to look at the Beatitudes, and I'm actually going to look at Matthew 5 and also Luke 6. So if you want to follow along, I'm in the New American Standard version. And I use that because word for word, that is a better English translation of the Greek than any other of the modern, even than the King James. Honestly, word for word. Love the King James. Not throwing any shade at that. I do. I do have issue with people who believe that the King James is what Paul and Jesus used, because they didn't. It was printed first in 1611. It was published in 1611, so that's about 1600 years after after Jesus and his time. So anyway, so it was a great and useful tool. The New American Standard, especially the one that I'm using tonight, is the 1977 publishing. Very close word for word translation. So I appreciate that as a I would say biblical scholar, but I appreciate that as a pastor. I hope you will too. So in Matthew 5, and I think I'm going to have to use my reading glasses because the font is very small on this particular version. The Sermon on the Mount, and Dr. William Warren at New Orleans Seminary, under whom I took a Sermon on the Mount Greek class, had to translate it. He said if you didn't have anything else, if all you had, if you were able to keep 3 pages of the Bible, you keep Matthew 5, 6, and 7. Because Jesus talked about, he encapsulated what it means to live that life following Christ and following after Christ in the Sermon on the Mount. And one of the things about the teachings of Jesus is they were very consistent. And so in my mind, I'm just going to level with you. I try to push us as a church at Ebenezer to be consistent with what we say we believe. And there are very many times when that will intersect with what the world says, that will intersect with what we might believe as, let's say, Americans or Republicans or Democrats, or or whichever flavor you want to try, South Carolinians. And the ultimate goal for me is, and until I'm removed from this office, either by God or by men, that does happen in Southern Baptist churches, or I'm permitted to retire, which I'm a little ways from that. There are people praying for it though. Until that time, my push is for us to live more like Christ, because I believe if we will put that first, then all these other things will fall into place. I saw a quote, can't remember where I saw it. Someone might have sent it to me. I can't remember. I saw it yesterday, that said that the goal of the church doesn't need to be to take America back. If the goal of the church was to live like Christ, that will win America back. And so that's huge, especially, this week I heard something, Carey Nieuwhof said something just really seminal in my thought process, because it's really made me think that part of the reason we're so cutthroat now, and that we as a culture, especially in America, can't get along, is we tie our identities to what we believe and who we think we are. We tie our identities to things like presidential candidates, ball teams, philosophies. We haven't tied our identity to Christ. And so we got to get back to the basics on that. So Matthew 5, and for the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at these things on Wednesday night, just a small portion. Matthew 5, verse 1, Matthew writes, and seeing the multitudes, he went up to the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came unto him, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they that hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are they that have been persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And then in verse 11 he shifts. And he says, Blessed are you when men shall approach you, persecute you, and say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets that were before you. Now I'm going to tell you, there are a couple of verses here before we start kind of and flip over to Luke 6 and look at that passage. There are a couple of verses here that really stand out. One of them is verse 9. And the Christian Law Enforcement Association in Florence County, which I hope they're still in existence. I used to have an opportunity to go and spend time with them. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. That was their verse. And what a great approach to law enforcement that actually goes against what the world claims, that they be peacemakers. And you know, I know there are some bad apples and bad seeds in law enforcement. Hey, there are in church work too. There are I get a Christian news burst, and it's very even. It's very level. I mean, it's not just ultra conservative news. It is, they put things on there sometimes that I don't agree with. They cover everything, so it's not, you know, but I'm constantly seeing things about pastors and you know, child molestation, stealing pictures off somebody's phone. I mean, there's crazy stuff out there, and every time something like that pops, it just reminds me there's another reason that people look at me funny when they don't know me, because the world will throw plenty of reasons out there not to trust a minister, and just like they'll throw plenty of reasons out there not to trust a policeman. And there are bad apples in every profession, but there are a lot of good people out there too. Don't forget that. That leads me to verse 11. And you know, blessed are you when men shall reproach you, persecute you, say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. And Jesus said, be glad, your reward is great in heaven. They persecuted the prophets before you. That is the pastor's verse. You know, somewhat before COVID. Since COVID, things have just gotten so strange, you know, as a pastor. And I have been at Ebenezer for over 29 years now, and moved into the role of preaching every week in 1999, and then was called full-time as pastor in 2001. So I've been in Florence for a while, and I've been doing this for a little while now, and I can tell you, you know, after 29 years, you're gonna make some people mad at you, and there are people in this community that don't care for me. There are people that love me. And Dean Lisenby always reminds me that don't put too much stock in the 10% that think you do no wrong, and don't put too much stock in the 10% that think you can't do anything right. But you got to find the truth in the middle. And there are times when David White makes mistakes, and there are times when I'm very unlovable, and I know that. But hey, pastor, if you're a pastor and you're seeing this, look up, because people are gonna make stuff up. You know, haters gonna hate. You can come up with any way you want to say it that you need to say it, but it's okay. And that verse tells me it's okay. Now in Luke 6. Luke records it from a different perspective. It's actually the same teaching time. But in verse 20, Luke writes of Luke 6, and he lifted up his eyes on his disciples and says, blessed are you poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you that hunger now, for you shall be filled. Blessed are you that weep now, for you shall laugh. Blessed are you when men shall hate you, and when they shall separate you from their company, and reproach you, and cast out your name as evil for the Son of Man's sake. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for behold, your reward is great in heaven. In the same manner they did their fathers did unto the prophets. Now, the reason I wanted to read the Luke 6 account those basically run right along the lines of the verses we just read. But in verse 24, Jesus said, "But woe unto you that are rich, for you've received your consolation. Woe unto you that are full now, for you'll be hungry. Woe unto you that laugh now, for you'll mourn and weep. Woe unto you when all men speak well of you, for in the same manner they did their fathers to the false prophets." So there's a flip side. The Beatitudes are the blessings, and then Jesus went through the woes. Now, the woes, I believe, and the woes are very important, because I think he's talking about, woe unto you if these are the things you worship. If you worship wealth, woe unto you, because you've already received your reward. If you worship satisfaction, woe unto you, because you're going to be very unsatisfied. If you worship laughter, if you worship just revelry, and woe unto you, because you'll mourn and weep. If you worship a good reputation, and he's not saying, I don't believe he's saying you shouldn't have a good reputation. I mean, I'm going to tell you, one of the finest men and I talked about this last week, I guess, didn't I? But one of the finest men that I've ever known, and loved him dearly, is Ted Mears. In fact, I will tell you that 3 of the finest men I've ever known we've buried in the last 5 months. Tony Fowler and Rick Lures and Ted Mears. And none of those men, I would say, worshipped a good name. But the way they lived their life built one. There are people who worship a good name. There are people, you find that in church work, you find it in sales, you find it in politics. There are people who worship a good name, but there are times when their actual actions betray that name. There's a man that, and I don't know him well. He's not part of Ebenezer. A local politician who really craves a good name, and he sends out some really good mailers. I've seen him at a distance, and I've seen how he treats people, and he's even treated me poorly, not knowing who I was, and that's fine. I don't care that he knows who I am or not, but with that, I can tell the difference between an image that's being cultivated and the actual person. I am much more drawn to someone who's real and who is genuine. Matter of fact, you're going to hear a lot about authenticity in the next few weeks from the pulpit on Sundays, and authenticity in the church. And I look for authenticity, and there are times when I know you catch people on a bad day. There are times when things like that happen, but we have got this call to be authentic. And I think in a lot of ways we're not living up to it. I think social media conditions us to be less than authentic, inauthentic. I guess that's a word. So, but I think that Jesus is talking in the Sermon on the Mount. I'm going to go back to Matthew 5 about authenticity. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who are being real about life. They're going to be blessed. The poor in spirit, those that mourn, the meek, those that hunger and thirst after righteousness. Now, and there's a real flip there. Those that hunger and thirst after righteousness, they will be satisfied. Those that hunger and thirst after the things of the world, or a good name, or wealth, or they won't. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. That one is huge for the church. I have seen more mercilessness in the church in the last 5 years than I've seen in the world. It's just there are some brutal things that happen. I don't think we can blame COVID, but I do think that COVID has changed the way we look at life, and in times or in some instances it has changed our willingness to be merciful. Verse 8, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. I mean, that's huge. And God knows who the pure in heart are. And of course, I've already broken down those other verses. I think one of the clear calls that Jesus puts on us in the Sermon on the Mount, and we're going to talk about this a lot, so you'll probably get bored or stop listening to me, and that's fine. But because I don't I don't do this because I don't throw a dartboard. I don't pull a piece of paper out of a drawer. I mean, I kind of go where God leads, and authenticity is where He's leading me this quarter. So we're going to talk about this a good bit. Blessed are you if you're being real with people, and if you're not, stop putting on the facade and just be real. Not telling you not to wear makeup, not telling you, dress the way you need to dress. I mean, do what you do to glorify God, but be real. Be real. Hope you have a great week.